This is the Wednesday, August 12th, 2026, 10 a.m. meeting for the Public Safety and Justice Committee.
Good morning, everyone. It is 10 a.m. on Thursday, June 11th, 2026, and I am calling to order this meeting of the Public Safety and Justice Committee. Let's begin with a roll call, Nancy.
Vice Chairperson Lee
Good morning, President.
and Chairperson Ellenberg.
I am here as well.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We will move directly to public comment. This is the portion of the agenda set aside for members of the public who wish to address this committee on matters not on today's agenda, but within the purview of the committee. Do we have any speakers?
We have one request to speak on Zoom.
All right, thank you very much. We will just waiting a second to see if there's anyone else. Close the queue at one speaker. Thank you.
Okay, 3 minutes. Parent, I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You have 3 minutes to speak. Seem to be having some technical difficulties. Let's see if we can get this going.
Good morning to you all. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Spoken to you guys on many occasions about my children that are being sexually molested. My son, he's confirmed that my ex-wife was letting a man rape him beginning when he was 13. There had been unnecessary bathing with the children, and also there was sexual contact between 2 of the children, and this all caused my children to be withdrawn and anxious. They complained about not having friends during this time period when the abuse first started. My son, he's told me that he's suicidal and strung out on drugs, and I cannot get a screening for my kids. There's never been an investigation of any kind. Nobody's even spoken to my kids to ask them, are you guys okay? Are you guys being sexually abused? And now the person who's trafficking my kids is threatening to physically harm them. And I've reported this as well. I mean, it's terrible what's going on with my kids. And the reason I can't get a screening is because Jeff Rosen, he's blocking access for my children to get one at the Child Advocacy Center. And I wanted to see if Supervisor Allenberg or President Lee could help me to get a screening for my children. If there's anything that you guys could do, because if you leave it up to Jeff Rosen, the abuse is going to continue. I mean, he doesn't care. He probably let all the children in this county be trafficked. Les Wexner, because he just, these kind of things don't matter to him. The children, they're all potential slaves. And I know that Supervisor Allenberg and President Lee, they care about people. They have humanity. And every time they hear me speak, it hurts them. I know it does. They're not callous like Jeff Rosen. Please, if you guys can help me, President Lee and Supervisor Allenberg, you guys, I've emailed you guys lots of times. You guys know what's going on. Please show this county that you guys actually care. Please, I'm begging you guys. Please, thank you for your time, and I look forward to hearing.
That was our final speaker.
Thank you. The county recognizes that the topic the public speaker addressed, child sexual abuse, can be emotionally challenging or triggering for listeners. California law prohibits the disclosure of information related to an investigation of suspected child abuse or neglect. As a result, by law, we are not authorized to speak on the specifics of any particular case or the results of an investigation in that case, including when allegations are made as part of public comment. California law requires child welfare departments to immediately cross-report physical and sexual abuse of children to law enforcement and the district attorney so that swift action may be taken when needed. The public should be assured that our county takes all allegations of child abuse and neglect seriously and takes appropriate action. That includes rapid and cross-agency responses to such allegations by the Department of Children and Family Services, local law enforcement, the Child Advocacy Center, and the district attorney. We're going to move now to the consent calendar. President Lee, do you have any changes to the calendar?
No change.
Would you like to make a motion to approve it as published?
Yes. So moved.
I will second that. Do we have any public speakers on the consent calendar?
There are no requests to speak on this item.
All right, let's vote then, please.
Vice Chairperson Lee?
Aye.
And Chairperson Ellenberg?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Item 4 is to receive a report from the Office of the Sheriff related to the Incarcerated Person Advisory Council, Incarcerated Person Survey, and enhancements to the Elmwood Correctional Facilities camera monitoring system. We have Lieutenant Wynn, Captain Dela Cruz, and Captain Lopez. And others. Good morning. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning,
Thank you.
Chairperson Ellenberg, President Lee, and the members of this committee. I'm Captain Dela Cruz, Facility Commander for the Elmwood facility. To my left is Captain Lopez. He is in charge of the main jail. To my right here is Sergeant Atwall. He is the Elmwood Administration Sergeant, and Captain Stream from the Enforcement Division. What we're here, we're going to be talking about 3 things: providing an update in regards to the surveys, the Inmate Advisory Council, and the facility monitors for the Elmwood facility. This slide here represents an established sustainable framework developed in collaboration with Oakland for survey development, distribution, and review, because we wanted to ensure the survey process remains impartial and independent. It was determined that Oakland will be in charge of developing, analyzing, and providing results to the stakeholders. The Sheriff's Office's responsibility is to ensure the facilitation, distribution, and collection occurs and is efficient. There's 2 ways to conduct a survey. One is paper-based, and one is through the tablets. As you can see on the slide, Oakland is going to develop it. It's going to be handed off to the custody facilities, and we will be in charge of facilitating and distributing the surveys and collecting it and sending it off to the Oakland for analysis. And once it's been analyzed by Oakland, they are the ones who's going to be distributing the results to the stakeholders.
Good morning. Prior to establishing the IAC meeting, there's multiple steps that need to be taken in preparation for the meeting. First, ballots are distributed amongst the population, both in paper and digitally available on their tablets. Once representatives are selected amongst the population, a questionnaire is sent to them to assist them with formulating questions and topics to be discussed at the meeting. Once finalized, those are shared with the various stakeholders and agendas created for the scheduled meeting. Our next meeting is for the 27th of this month.
Good morning, everyone. As the captain stated, I'm the administrative sergeant over at the Elmwood facility. One of my responsibilities is I oversee all facility projects that go on throughout the facilities, which include the camera upgrade. Recently, we have installed additional monitoring systems in additional monitors in the M2 building, the M3 building, the M4, and M5 building. We also added 2 additional monitors on the minimum compound. This area is one of the areas that has the most amount of cameras. So one of the monitors that were installed at the minimum compound was actually a 40-inch LCD television. So this enhancement of our security system allows our staff to view multiple angles at once on a larger screen, which allows for them to, even if they're not in that significant area where there is an incident happening, they could call out over the radio just based off of what they're seeing and get staff to respond. In addition to adding the monitors, one of the things we look at is doing assessments to see how we could improve our current security system. And one of those things is for it to be more efficient. We all know, the human element, human eye can only view so much. So we are exploring AI technology, which our cameras do have capability of incorporating, and that'll allow us to be more efficient when it comes to ensuring the safety and security of the staff and incarcerated population. I'll pass that portion over to Captain Stream, who has more additional information on the technology we're exploring.
Good morning. Thank you, Sergeant. Yeah, as you've seen in the report, the Sheriff's Office is already making targeted upgrades to support safety, visibility, and operational efficiency. What we'll be presenting at a future meeting is the natural next step, a comprehensive integrated technology package designed to pull all of these improvements together into a single coordinated operational picture for the Sheriff's Office. At the core of this package is the Real-Time Information Center, or RTIC. Right now, our operations rely on multiple systems that work well individually but don't talk to each other. The RTIC changes that. It serves as a central hub where camera feeds, facility sensors, incident reporting tools, and analytics platforms can be unified. Instead of having staff move between systems or rely on siloed information, the RTIC enables coordinated monitoring, quicker decision-making, and clearer communication across teams. Imagine the RTIC system being able to automatically detect medical events, fights, suicide attempts, perimeter breaches, weapon possession, and more, and then alerting staff in real time. This technology is real, it's customizable to our needs, and will improve detection, response, and investigations. So at a future PSJC meeting, we intend to bring this technology before you as part of a comprehensive technology package to improve facility safety, incarcerated person safety, deputy safety, and operational efficiency. We'd be happy to answer any questions you might have regarding anything we talked about today.
Thank you very much for the report. I'm going to go first to members of the public. Thanks, Nancy, for comments, and then come back to everyone on the dais. Thank you.
There are no requests to speak on this item.
Oh, okay. Then thank you very much for the report and for the responsiveness to the questions from my staff. I appreciate that, and have just a few follow-ups. First, regarding the inmate survey process, what is the mechanism for an outside agency to submit a survey for approval by CCLAM and OCLAM?
As of right now, there is no link on the sheriff's website, but I believe that there's a link on the county website where they can reach out to Oakland for that. I was, wish Julie was here, but she's.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are.
Hi, Julie.
Sorry.
So whether it's, say, the Commission on the Status of Women or I can't remember the name of the organization I was thinking of, but independent CBOs that provide programs and want to interact or do interact with people in custody, how would they submit surveys?
Hi, good morning, supervisors. I'm sorry I signed on a few minutes late. I am I want to take a step back and talk a little bit about the idea of surveys, and hopefully this will answer your question, Supervisor Ellenberg. We, at the CCLAM meeting on Monday, we talked with them about our plans for creating an assessment tool. I hesitate to just call it a survey because there may be other components to it than just the survey, but a sort of systematic way to get input from incarcerated persons and learn about their experiences in custody. And as part of that, we want to be able to get input from CCLEM. And so we sort of suggested, and they agreed on Monday to form a subcommittee that would work with us on developing this kind of assessment tool or survey to really take a gauge, sort of a measure the temperature of the custody environment. And, part of the goal there is to have an easy way for members of the public to have input into that, whether it is the Commission on the Status of Women, whether it's individuals from DBUG, formerly incarcerated persons who, have some views on what kinds of questions, what kinds of things we ought to be asking and learning about. And the subcommittee of CCLEM just provides some flexibility in the way that they can meet and the way they can work with us to provide that input.
So they couldn't, apologies for interrupting, I just want to
No,
clarify. So you're talking about ways in which they can have input on surveys that OCLEM or CCLEM are conducting. Is there an option for them to independently submit a survey that they could either administer in person or that would be administered for them, but that is created by that organization for their purposes?
I'm not aware of that, though I don't know that the sheriff's office would be opposed to that. I had not heard that there was a desire for that. And I'm certainly willing to work with any of those organizations who are considering that, or with your office if you've heard of that. I had not independently heard that there were organizations looking to directly survey the incarcerated population. But it's definitely something we can look into and take into account if there is that desire.
I appreciate your openness to that. I do know that the commission has done that in the distant past, pre-COVID. So let's put a pin in that until there's a specific case where an organization is seeking to do that, and we'll look. But in the meantime, I would like the existing survey process to be posted on the sheriff transparency portal, and ideally a CCLEM website. I don't think a CCLEM website exists. Is that correct?
I believe that's right, and I do think that's something the county could work on. I know that the OCLEM web page sort of lives. There's a button on the Board of Supervisors link on the county website, which I think would be the right place for a CCLEM web page to be located.
Great. Yeah.
So I can certainly work with the county technology folks who work on our webpage and who are regularly, responsive to our requests to post new reports and do that. And we can put something up about a survey on our webpage, but I think having a direct thing for CCLEM would also be an excellent idea.
Supervisor Ellenberg, could I just pipe in one quick sentence about that idea? I'm happy to work with Julie and with my colleague who directly advises Julie's office as well as CCLEM. I just would want to be careful about Brown Act considerations around a commission having a website and sort of communicating jointly through that website. I think that can be managed, but just wanted to pipe in quickly on that.
Thank you, Kavita. I appreciate that. And in the form that's appropriate, would be interested in seeing OCLEM and CCLEM both posted together on the county website, and then also on the sheriff's, a link through the sheriff's transparency page, because that may be where people look first, rather than broadly at the county. And to go back to my previous statement about outside organizations, we did recently have a request specifically by DBUG, which is what prompted the ask. So I would ask you to go back and work with my office or directly with Debug and maybe help us develop a policy for outside organizations. And thank you, Kavita, as well. So would also include direction for the creation of a CCLEM web page that includes the history of the creation, their role, the work plan, membership, past and future agendas. Thank you. You're nodding. You know all the stuff. Thank you. Regarding the IAC, I believe is it the Sheriff's Office or OCLEM that's recommending that meetings be held biannually rather than quarterly, as they had been prior to the pandemic. Can someone say a little bit about that?
Yeah, I could speak on that.
Thank you.
Brooks Lopez, captain for the main jail. We've been working collaboratively with Julie and OIR, looking at our IAC process and how we can improve that. I think, as I explained briefly, high level, explained the process on what goes into an IAC, from the ballots going out to the representatives being selected, getting the information out to the various stakeholders, and having all those stakeholders present in the same room for these days. And then having time to circle back and address the topics, concerns, or issues that may have come up in the meeting, and having those ready for the next meeting. We found that having a quarterly would kind of run into each other without having sufficient time to plan for a proper IAC.
Thank you. I'm not adverse to trying it that way, and I'm sure you'll hear from committee members if they are feeling that that's not enough and can reevaluate if appropriate. What percentage of appointees to the IAC are women?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
What percentage of the IAC appointees are women, coming from our women's custody?
Our weapons?
Women.
Our women, sorry. About 30% attend. So what happens in an IC meeting is that every module is visited, and then they are offered to select a member that they choose to represent that module. So, for example, in one of the units at Women's, there are areas where there are only a few individuals that are housed in that module, and sometimes, like for example, this one coming up, there was nobody wanted to be wanted to attend. In those cases, we still inquire that, do you guys have any questions? Because those questions can still be taken into the IAC meeting and addressed, and they'll receive an answer to those questions. And the questions that we want them to produce are questions that affect the population, as opposed to individualized questions, so that it affects the entire
Thank you.
custody.
Do you find that just proportionately are the women less interested in participating?
Oh, no.
No. Oh, good.
It's just,
Good.
the percentage of males compared to the women.
Of course.
And that's why it seems like it's a small percentage, but there are representatives for each module.
Well, you said about
residential.
30%, which
Yes.
makes sense proportionally.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that response as well. Just finally, I appreciate as well that the IAC meeting summaries will be posted to the Sheriff's Transparency portal. I'd also like them going forward to be posted on the PSJC agenda just as a consent item. And the report should include the meeting summary and a status update of any action. And with that direction, I will move approval of move receipt of the report and turn to you.
Certainly second.
Okay. Do you have any additional comments or direction on this item?
No, I think we're definitely moving the right direction. The new technology, you talk about having the centralized location to view these footage, I think is really important. We've had experiences where on-site monitoring was clearly inadequate, and individuals have been beat up and injured very seriously because of that. Why should there not be additional monitoring? Because the feed is there, right? The information is there, and those who actually works on site a lot of times will not be able to be monitoring these screens at the same time, understood, because they're running around. So having this feed going somewhere else in addition, so that you have somebody who could really be seeing it directly, I think is important. Having bigger screens, of course, is important so you can see what's going on. And with the technology, as we know, we talk about AI a lot, but the implementation of these technology to sense, like, hey, suddenly there's a congregation of folks, anything out of the ordinary will be observed. So I think those are really interesting. I mean, being in Silicon Valley, I really think that this is the right step moving forward. I look forward to hear how this implementation is happening, and hopefully at the end of the day, it would be, saving people's lives. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Looking both ways on the dais, I don't see any lights for comment, so let's vote, please.
Vice Chairperson Lee?
Aye.
And Chairperson Ellenberg?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries with 2.
Thank you. Item 5 is to receive a report from the Office of the County Executive. Thank you all from the Sheriff's Office. Item 5 is to receive a report from the Office of the County Executive relating to the jail facility transformation process. And I believe Consuelo is coming down. Deputy County Executive Consuelo Hernandez. Good morning, all.
Good morning, Chair Ellenberg and Vice Chair Lee. Consuelo Hernandez, Deputy County Executive. I'm joined this morning by my colleagues from the Sheriff's Office and Custody Health, Assistant Sheriff Duran, and Dr. Luna. See if I can navigate this slide. And there is a lot of information here this morning, and I will do my very best to be quick but clear. If you recall, in October 2024, the board approved county administration's recommendation for the jail facility transformation process. That process includes the 4 components that you see before you. One of the things that I wanted to flag early on is that this framework has allowed the county to balance the reality of our requirements and obligation to provide and operate a jail with the realities of our budgetary constraints, the goals of improving our jail facilities, and other efforts in the county around alternatives to incarceration. Today's presentation, rather than focusing on each element, will primarily focus on the recommendations that as staff, in partnership with our consultant, CGL, and taking all the input that we have received from very select members of the community to focus on what that investment plan looks like. Before we begin on the recommendations, we wanted to share with you some of the strategic considerations that went into the recommendations. First are the major operational priorities. So balancing the operational challenges with our existing facilities, the outstanding consent decree compliance, and the priority from staff and in caring for the inmate population, there were 4 identified priorities that would help shape the recommendations, and they're not organized in any particular order. We shared this with this committee back in March, but I will just briefly mention them here. The enhancement of our behavioral and medical services, improvements to our intake, resizing and reimagining the way that we house folks, all our existing bed capacity in our system. While we have the number needed to meet the projected population needs, the functionality of those housing units does not allow us to provide care in moderate correctional practices, a separation and function for women. So all of those together in addition to all the behavioral and medical needs are the major operational factors that were included to prioritize the recommendations. We also conducted a jail population refresh. In October of 2024, the board received a report around the jail population projections. One of the things that we found is that it's important to constantly be looking at those trends to ensure that we are not recommending overbuilding facilities when we don't need them. In our current rated capacity, we have over 4,800 beds in our adult jail system. About 3,800 of them are actually used and operational. By 2035, the county needs to have a little over 3,400 beds in our adult jail facility in order to accommodate our peaking factor of need. And so think about that 3,400 number. So as we look at these recommendations, that is the number that we are working around, not the current 4,800 that is in our system capacity. We also, when I mentioned the peaking factors, if we looked at our current population trends, the number is closer to about 3,000, but you have to factor in at a bit of a bump above the average daily population number. So all of that information, a lot was provided to you in March, but just wanted to flag those here. And then the other thing that you have to keep in mind is this initial phase of the work was very technical. What are the conditions of our buildings? What are buildings that we can keep? What is a reasonable rehabilitation of an existing facility without disrupting operations? What is the reality of our budget and how much we can invest at once? Again, because we are required to have and operate a jail. And we are required to make sure that we maintain that in a manner that is good for the inmate and good for staff. And so how we've approached the recommendation in looking at the current financial environment, plus all of the investment that the Board of Supervisors has made in alternative efforts to incarceration, expanding behavioral health, is a long-term plan with a short-term prioritization of 3 phases of work that will allow us to directly address those 5 operational needs. So as we go into this, just keep that in mind. And I should also say that this conversation is particularly difficult when we're thinking about the order of operations. So it is not a linear conversation. We are going to start by talking first about Main Jail North and the vacant parcel next to it, and then we will talk a little bit about Elmwood and wrap up with the cost estimates that we currently have. So for Main Jail North, what our team, in partnership with our consultant at CGL, came up with is a real need to shift the mission of Main Jail North. So currently, Main Jail North serves as our long-term housing facility. So if you think about best practices in correctional, folks that are in long-term housing with us at Main Jail lack the resources to connect to program. They lack the open space. They have these, because of the way that the building is structured, it doesn't allow for a lot of, touching the grass, as the young folks say these days. And then we also have this high-level system-wide medical and behavioral health care. So all of the needs across the adult system, jail system related to medical and behavioral, they're all housed at Main Jail North. So what we are proposing through this is to shift the mission of Main Jail North to a short-term and transitional facility that can really focus on that initial assessment and orientation, have a lower level of classification, and really have the medical and behavioral services that are solely focused on the folks that are staying at Main Jail and not for the system-wide. We are also recommending that we build a smaller structure next to Main Jail North, a 2-story facility, about 56,000 square feet. And I want to, again, impress upon you, there's no design here. The purpose of this is very technical, to identify the square footage that is needed based on the gaps in our system. Here, what we anticipate is having a refined intake process that would parallel workflow updates that Custody Health and the Sheriff's Office are working on. We've made some temporary fixes in Main Jail North, and if you have not looked at our new intake area, they might seem like they provide more privacy and more direct response to the consent decrees. We have seen other models that are less evasive, but still provide that privacy and security that people need when they're vulnerable coming in the booking area. So this is our recommendation here. It would have a second floor. We're also looking at this model and idea around what does short-term housing. We have folks that stay with us for half a day or stay with us for less than 10 days? Do those folks truly need to be transported to Elmwood, or can we hold them while we work on expediting their exit of our custody? Can we house them here and save money on transporting them? So that is something that we are working through, but the recommendation is to provide and build this structure. Then, of course, the question remains, what happens to Main Jail North? On the left, we show the current Main Jail North by floor, who's housed there, and what services are provided. We also have 1,113 beds that are activated. As part of the future years, and as I mentioned, it's not a linear conversation, so sometime after the recommendation at Elmwood, we will have to visit, apologies. We will have to visit how to pivot some of the functions at Main Jail North. So you'll see here, we've called out the renovation of 3 floors and a reduction in the number of active beds that are used at Main Jail. This is still a work in progress. The way that we have framed the recommendations allows us to have these conversations subsequently before you make a secondary investment. And you'll see that later in the presentation. We also wanted to show you what we studied but are not recommending. The first is to build something across the street. The county owns a 3.1 acre site known as the Ritchie site. Building something on that site would create some complications from an operational perspective, meaning we would have to build some type of access point from across the street to Main Jail North, whether that be a tunnel or a bridge, which is not feasible. We also looked at the construction of a new jail, eight floors, similar to what we have now, 400,000 square feet. That would require the county to invest a significant amount of money in one facility. It does not give you the opportunity to explore best practices, and it means you would not have enough resources to invest in Elmwood, which is by far the property that needs the most attention. Those two weren't explored, not recommended. I'll pivot to Elmwood. We always start with the question of if we had the ability and the property to start over, what would that look like? So our consultant asked the county to look through our real estate portfolio to identify another property, or could we go out and buy another property, because it is much easier to design when you have a blank slate. That was not recommended. The amount of money that it would require to buy a property would be too expensive, and we don't have another parcel that would fit that criteria. And so our recommendation is to upgrade the existing Elmwood through a series of investments that I'll go through next. We also worked with the staff to think through, maybe we can't start from scratch, but if we, given the property that we have, and the buildings, operationally and functionally, what would be the most optimal way of laying out? And I can share with you that we had variations of this. I'm very grateful to the sheriff staff and custody health staff who raised the flag and said, absolutely not. If you put the medical and mental health services where the current admin services are shown on this, it would not actually address the challenge that we have now, which is a 62-acre parcel. People getting to services from one end of the campus to the other is not functionally best for us. We ideally would like to centralize operations and have decentralized services in the different housing units. We shared this with you in March, but CGL has made a series of recommendations around the buildings that we should replace, renovate, or demolish. Everything in red you can see is what we are proposing to demolish. The blue was deemed functional enough and has enough life cycle from a building perspective to renovate, and the green is what we would keep without any renovation. So this first investment recommendation is a $1 billion investment that includes a pre-phase and 3 phases. The first phase is to construct a new warehouse. If I go back one slide, you'll see that we are recommending the demolition of the support services building. What's housed in there is the warehouse, the kitchen, and laundry. The warehouse is the hardest thing to replace. We saw in food, from a food perspective during COVID, we were able to find alternative options. For laundry, we're working with the probation department to find an alternative solution on the laundry. But the warehouse at Elmwood serves a key operational function for the sheriff's office. This is the location where all supplies are housed for both facilities. And so not starting with that step would create a lot of challenges. We also looked at the possibility of leasing out a warehouse, building a warehouse somewhere else, and just the proximity, it makes the most sense to build that warehouse. And we've offered the sheriff's office 2 options that we are still refining. One outside the current fencing, security fencing around Elmwood. The second is inside. So we'll keep refining those. In either option, we still have the ability to move into the next phase, which is the demolition. So phase 1 includes demolition of the minimum camp. I again want to thank the Sheriff's Office for being very creative with this. This allows us to actually create space for new construction. It also immediately results in the reduction of 1,130 beds. So again, remember that number, that 3,400 number I mentioned earlier. We were very mindful of, as these phases happen, there's a minimum number of beds that we need to keep operationally to ensure that we are not creating other unintended consequences from an operational perspective. Working closely with the Sheriff's Office and Custody Health, this reduction would not impact their operations significantly. There's always an impact, but this 1,130 allows us to create room for the construction of 3 new, either in one building or 3 separate buildings, a new mental health facility, which is, remember, that was one of the 5 primary objectives in going into this effort, a new medical facility, which we do not have at Elmwood today, and the construction of 672 new male housing beds that would allow us to move the high population from Main Jail North, and for phase 3, the demolition of M2 and M3. So you have to kind of look at these 2 things together. One reduces the male bed population by 540. The other adds 672 new beds. But those beds are the types of beds, when we get into the design phase, that would allow us to actually practice the best practices in housing. Right now, if you look at the M2 and M3, they are more kind of congregate. They don't actually allow for the care of folks. There's no program space within the housing units. And so this is, in fact, more of a replacement project than it is creating something, the full replacement of 3,400 beds across the system. So there's an add and a delete. And that makes up the kind of first bucket of investments that county administration is recommending. This chart here shows you what I've articulated orally, which is our current system capacity, that 4,800 number I mentioned, against the proposed system capacity based on the projected jail population of 3,400. And you'll see here in this table, this is the pre-phase and the 3 phases that we are recommending the board consider for investment. It shows you a reduction of male beds, and it shows you an addition of 100 mental health beds for women. So I do want to recognize that after this first phase, we would have more women's beds than we need. But there's demolition phases that happen in the following phases. But what this allows you to do is consider your jail population again at this juncture before making any additional recommendations for investment. The board did ask for a long-term plan, and that is why you see county administration presenting this supplemental investment of $2.5 billion in future phases that are mapped out. These costs are based on 5 years from now. What it would cost. If you look at it from today's dollars, it doesn't give you a true sense of what that cost is. At this juncture, county administration is recommending not investing in this $2.5 billion, but the board asked for a full plan. So if at the end of the day you wanted to see holistically what the adult system looks like, this is where you would land. And I want to flag that it does not include a future replacement of Main Jail North. We probably have an additional 15 or 20 years left in that building. But because of the uncertainty of the jail population, we did not factor in that replacement. It is something we will absolutely have to deal with, but at this juncture. So again, just to make sure that I'm clear, county administration's recommendation is to focus on the 3 phases that will allow the board to directly address the 5 operational priorities that were identified, that would address the consent decree, that would give the board the opportunity to truly make a significant operational change in how people are served in custody without having to invest the full program. It allows you to have that pivot. This is a schedule, Supervisor Lee, through prior board referrals, you have asked us for a schedule. This assumes some action from the board in August. This can shift extend further. In looking at what has been done in the past during the design phase, that has created a lot of lengthier processes. We have some ideas of how to integrate community input in the design and the application of best practices without substantially delaying the design phase of a project. Typically, you see a design phase permitting take around 2 years. If you're very efficient in your process, which doesn't sound pretty efficient because it's 2 years, but it is quite efficient. And so we have some ideas about how to integrate the community input. If you recall, Supervisor Ellenberg, in our community engagement plan, we are concluding this phase with the creation of an advisory group that would include members of the public, county staff, that would be looking at very defined design elements as part of the next phase. And then also just wanted to share that a few of us went on a number of peer engagement facility tours. This was to some extent an opportunity for us to learn from our colleagues what not to do. A lot of them did build during the pandemic and have actually seen similar trends to us, their jail population coming down. And now they have some facilities that are underutilized, which to some extent has allowed them to utilize the new facilities and vacate older ones. Or in the kind of worst case scenario, our colleagues in Arizona built 512 short-term beds without the adequate space for medical, mental health, and are now having to reinvest in that facility to make it more functional. We also did look at operational priorities when we were there. Supervisor Lee, you had asked us to look at specifically what a reentry service model might look like inside the jail versus outside. And I think we do still have more work to do on that front in how we pair our restorative services unit, which is inside, with our reentry services, which is outside. So there's space within this option as we get into the design to really look at what that looks like in a way that serves the most people. We went to Las Colinas in San Diego, beautiful campus. The way that it's designed, you think that you're in a college campus, and what we learned, unfortunately, is not everybody gets to enjoy the benefit of the open campus. I think we found that about 80 women that are housed there are the ones that get to benefit from the spaces. And so a lesson learned for us is, as we design, we should be designing with the operations team together. Because if we create these beautiful spaces that nobody can use and can't benefit from the restorative environment, then it is a improper investment if it's not actually going to support the folks that we house. I realize I talk very fast. I try to go through that in sufficient detail. We are refining. We still have a few other engagements that we are. We have a meeting with the Community Advisory Board for the Reentry Center on Thursday. We will also be walking them through, hopefully, thank you, Javier, again, for coordinating this, a deeper dive on the recommendations. Again, very technical recommendations at this point, but we are finalizing this before we go to the board on the 25th. And I will now turn it over to Chief Operating Officer Greta Hansen to share a few thoughts.
Thank you, Consuelo. I just wanted to take a really big step back, especially for the community members who are listening to this conversation and haven't had the benefit of some of the groundwork we've laid in prior meetings about why we are bringing forward what is frankly a very painful recommendation for administration to bring forward for a lot of different reasons I just want to share. First of all, we're obviously in a time of profound budget constraint, and so to bring forward a recommendation to make this level of investment in any facility is a really hard one to bring forward. It's also a really hard one to bring forward because we would much rather be making these sorts of investments in upstream interventions that are designed to keep folks out of custody. The reality that we face, though, and it's a very painful one, is we are legally obligated to operate a jail. We're legally operated to take custody of folks who the court remands to custody, and we have to do so in a manner that complies with the rights of the folks that we hold in our custody. Rights not only to have access to all of the care and support and services that they need and deserve while they're in our custody, but also to create environments for our staff to deliver that care in an appropriate and restorative way. And right now, we are failing massively to do that, notwithstanding incredible effort from county staff to make do with the facilities that we have, which are literally crumbling around them. So it is not safe for us, and it's not an option for us to continue the status quo, and that's just a really difficult pill for us to swallow. The other thing I'll just share is, as has been the case for this county in the not so distant past, and certainly for the state and for other counties, if we don't make these investments to come into legal compliance to ensure that we can provide the level of support, care, and safety that folks need in custody, the county's jails will enter receivership and will be ordered by the federal court to make even likely more costly investments in these services. So partly these recommendations come forward as a phased, we hope increasingly thoughtful plan as we build them out, opportunity to make what is the minimum investment necessary to meet our legal obligations and to serve people in the way that we need to, which is really, really difficult given the numbers that we're talking about and just the truly awful costs of construction associated with trying to rehab these facilities. If we were these are also recommendations to, as you heard, significantly reduce the number of jail beds that we have in our county. This recommendation would, at the end of construction, reduce by 1,400 the number of beds that we have in our jails. And I just want to call that out because it's a really significant reflection of the commitment we've made to try and divert as many folks as possible from custody. We will continue to really aggressively pursue those efforts and to refine our jail population projections as time goes forward. As we've discussed in this committee, we've seen some recent decisions by the California Supreme Court that have changed what may be the number of folks who are held in custody. We've developed more and more alternatives to incarceration. I think we anticipate more technology that may allow for other portions of our jail population to be pivoted from custody to out of custody supervision, which is something that we will continue to prioritize, certainly as much, if not more, than any investments we'd make in holding people in custody. And we feel really fortunate to have a sheriff's office, a board, an entire community that really supports those alternatives. But these really difficult recommendations are ones that we have an obligation to bring forward, given that the alternative is an almost certain mandate from the federal court to make even greater investments in these facilities in order for us to comply with our legal obligations.
Thank you, Consuelo and Greta, both for the report and to everyone who helped put this together. I do want to go to the public before we get into too much here, but I want to ask just one question first. The consent decrees are driving at least a portion of this work. And starting with a warehouse, I understand why that makes sense operationally for the sheriff's office, but does that delay our time under the consent decree because it doesn't address I don't see how it addresses concerns about conditions for the people who are in our custody?
Thank you, Supervisor Ellenberg, for the question. And I will work on refining how I talk about the warehouse. The design of the new proposed facilities at Elmwood and the demolition, those take time. So it doesn't, It's the way that our building codes are written where you can't go in and simply demolish a building. You have to come up with a design plan for the demolition. And so it's intended to happen concurrently. So the construction, for instance, of a warehouse is less complicated. You don't have to demolish the space. It's a 40,000 square foot, or apologies, I forget the exact number. It's essentially that can happen at the same time that the solicitation process for we're going to need help in managing the project. One of the things that county administration wants to do here is make sure that we have the right capacity, combination of staff and consultants who understand what we're trying to do and the urgency around it. And that also takes a little bit of time. And so it would happen concurrently. I think, again, we're working on refining. It's a linear conversation, but things happen concurrently, and so it's stacked. The design and selection for the warehouse would happen concurrently with the selection of a consultant, and then that quickly would enter into design.
Got it. Thank you. I appreciate that. It did sound sequential, so thank you for that clarification. Let's go to our public speakers, please. And I see it looks like there might be another yellow card in there now. Or no, those are the blank yellow cards.
Yes.
Okay.
We do have 12 requests to speak for individuals in person and 3 on Zoom. And holding at 3 for a total of 15.
Okay. If we are capping at 15, we can do 2 minutes.
Okay.
If we hold for another second and anybody else joins, we'll have to cut that down. Are we holding at 15?
We're holding at 15.
Okay. 2 minutes per speaker. Thank you so much.
Okay. I'm going to call 5 individuals to please come up and approach the podium. When you begin speaking, please state your name for the record so I can ensure that everybody who has requested to speak gets an opportunity. Raj Jayadev, Musa, Alicia Chavez, A, and Andrew Bigelow.
Hi, good morning. We submitted a letter on behalf of DBUG and our communities in opposition of this proposal. And since 2020, we've opposed the construction of a new jail and also in this new iteration for the needs of our current community today, but also for the future, for the children of our community and your children as well. At a time of unprecedented budget crises and deficits, at a time where there's urgent and desperate needs for housing, for social services, for mental health care, for schools, for infrastructure, we believe that investing in a project of $2.5 billion, it's the first time I ever said those numbers on this dais, would be attributable and consistent with a dereliction of duty of political leadership. At a time when we're closing schools, the children of our members, the thought that this political leadership would move away from their future opportunities and build a cage for them to exist in when they reach adulthood is really abhorrent to think about. If we invest in this road, go down this decision, we would have produced the most expensive carceral system in the country. That would be the legacy of Santa Clara County in this era. That's not the legacy we want to build. And we also know that at the same time, we're also fighting the construction of another carceral facility. This county has agreed to stop and to fight against the building of an ICE jail in Santa Clara County. The same arguments for not building an ICE jail hold here as well to not building a county facility. And we're asking for some moral consistency there. What you're deciding on today is whether you want to send a time capsule to the future, a message in the bottle. Do we want our Santa Clara County future to be incarcerated or to be free?
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Azizel Holmquist, and I'm a resident of Santa Clara County District 2. First, and I'm a member of SEARCH, and a very grateful member of SEARCH. First, I would like to state that I have been assaulted by correctional officers here in this county more than once. This is not an isolated incident. Correctional officers are not usually held accountable. We should not do another system of punishment, but a system of embracing human rights and preventative measures. $2.5 billion is enough for this and to put back into programs that were unfunded this budget season. $2.5 billion should be reallocated to other things such as preventative measures to jail. There's plenty of evidence-based practice already researched, so we would not be starting from scratch. The amount of assaults that I have heard about is unacceptable. This is not rehabilitation. The trauma of this happening increases the recidivism rate. Stand with me on the change. I would be glad to help free of charge to help design a new way of doing things. People that have been impacted by the incarceral system need to be involved in the mending of this system. We know what will work and what doesn't work. And we know what will be most effective. The $2.5 billion is enough to fund a system of resources to replace incarceration. And I will email you guys if you're open to discussing this. Lastly, I think every inmate is not consenting to incarceration. Consent matters.
Hi, my name is Alicia Chavez. I'm with Silicon Valley Debug. For over 6 years, this board has repeatedly asked for community feedback on this issue, and the answer from the community has been a consistent and overwhelming no. Over and over, the community has rejected expanding the footprint of incarceration in our county. Continuing to push this proposal ignores years of community input. Supervisor Ellenberg and Supervisor Lee have taken a strong and moral stand against the ICE detention facility they're trying to build in South County and the harm it inflicts on our immigrant community. That exact same moral standard should apply to the local incarceration. We cannot condemn one type of family separation and systemic racial disparities in like these federal facilities while simultaneously spending over $2 billion to incarcerate people in our local community. It is a contradiction to oppose one system of incarceration while pouring billions into another. I urge you to respect the community's voice and invest our public resources into real safety, like housing, mental health, and community resources, not over $2 billion in mass incarceration.
Sure. Okay, cool. Good morning. My name is Musa with CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, and we strongly oppose the recommendation to invest $2.5 billion in a new county jail. We are deeply concerned that despite years of sustained and overwhelming community opposition, the county is nonetheless moving rapidly toward proposals and financing for a new jail. Committing $2.5 billion to incarceration is the wrong priority, especially as essential programs, including healthcare, education, social services, and more, are currently facing severe cuts. A new jail would divert from resources that are integral to community safety towards building more cages. Long-term research shows that building more jails and increasing incarceration has a marginal to zero impact on reducing violent crime, and it perpetuates cycles of higher local detention and socioeconomic destabilization. The county previously and correctly opposed an ICE detention facility because it threatened the most vulnerable communities here, and that same moral obligation applies today. Please reject this proposal. Another jail will not make Santa Clara County safer. Thank you.
As the next speaker approaches, I'll call on a few more speakers. Lori, Leslie, Cynthia Dalcourt, Nereli Campos, and Rudy Cuevas.
Hi, how you doing? My name is Andrew Bigelow, organizer with Silicon Valley Debug, and I'm also standing up here to oppose this $2.5 billion recommendation to build it. You know, we're going to need a lot more than 2 minutes to talk about how $2.5 billion could be invested into Santa Clara County in a way that would prevent any of these beds needing to exist. Some of them were already mentioned, but, you know, child care, Medicare, eviction defense and eviction housing vouchers. There's a lot of different things that could be preventative to folks ending up in the financial and economic situation that may cause them to do something else, right? To end up in these beds or something. I just want to, if we got some time, I just want to say, if anyone knows what happens in eviction court, it's in the civil court downtown. I highly encourage folks to go look at it. People who are being evicted who can't afford their rent or for whatever reason have to go to this court and they have no public defense. There's no public defender, there's no attorney, and they get sent into a hallway to be railroaded by landlord attorneys to either settle, get money from the county to pay for that rent, so maybe they could stay, maybe they could reach the next rent. We see holes all the time where people fall through cracks and they end up in situations that are traumatic and feels like beyond repair. And so to stand here and to think about $2.5 billion being invested, we've reached out to county folks to talk about how do we fund a public program to be able to have public defense and housing court, and we don't know where the money is. We can't find the money. It's the idea of being able to afford that is crazy. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Lori Catcher. I'm a 24-year resident of District 2 in Santa Clara County, and I'm a member and organizer with Showing Up for Racial Justice. I agree with everything that my fellow community members have shared here. I'm literally just sickened by hearing the number that we're talking about, the $2.5 billion. With everything, all of the ways that we could support our children, our families, so that when they become adults, they are thriving. And we're not doing that, as Andrew just mentioned. There are huge holes. That's the kind of community I want to live in. That's the kind of Santa Clara County I want my children to live in, where people come here and they see that we're thriving because people are housed, because people have food, because people have mental and physical health care that don't cause them to become homeless if they can't afford their medical bills. Our Black and brown communities and our folks here with disabilities have been and continue to be targeted by racist, ableist, and classist systems. That is a fact. Cultural and systemic issues, including excessive force, staff misconduct, medical neglect, and more, will not be fixed by transforming the jail facility. At a time when these same abuses are on full display by federal immigration enforcement, we need you, our leaders in Santa Clara County, to stand with and for us and to fund upstream conditions that allow every Santa Clara County resident to be safe, stable, and seen. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Naralee. I'm an organizer with Debug, but today I'm speaking to you as a concerned parent. As my child started school today, I couldn't help but think about all the kids across our county who are starting the school year at a new school, not because they have chosen to leave, but because their previous school could no longer afford to keep its doors open. They're being asked to adjust to new classrooms, new teachers, friends, and an entirely new environment because of budget cuts. This is personal for me because last year my own child was affected when his school closed down. I saw firsthand what the disruption does to a child and their family. That is why I struggle to understand how Santa Clara County can consider spending $2.5 billion on a new jail while schools in our communities are closing down because they can't afford to keep funding and stay open. What message are we sending? That we are closing schools for our 9-year-olds today while preparing to spend billions on building a new jail for when they turn 18? We have read the report, and if we truly care about public safety, then let's invest in our children before they ever reach the criminal justice system. Let's invest in schools, mental health, housing, families, and opportunities. We should be building a county that plans for our children's success, not their incarceration.
Hello, my name is Cynthia Dalcourt, and I'm a System Impacted Family Member, a registered voter, and a debug organizer. I'm concerned about the proposed planning and excessive cost for the building of a new jail. As a mother and grandmother of Black children, I am afraid for their well-being. My son was housed in the main jail for 3 years, and he told me that he didn't think that he would he didn't think that he would come home alive. He feared that he was going to die in the main jail. A new building would not prevent the systemic racism and harsh treatment that occurs in the jail. Yes, I am afraid because you are building a new jail that would target my children and other children that look like them. Money should be put into education and other training that will help secure their future. Men are being released from CDCR. A lot of them spent excessive time behind bars because they did not have the financial means to fight their case. Now you're planning to build a new jail to fill their grandchildren and children in, and fill it with their grandchildren and children. Working with Silicon Valley Debug, I have talked to parents whose loved ones were not allowed to take any classes in the main jail to get their high school diplomas. What about focusing on programming in the jail that will help young men and women take classes? Also, during my visit to the jail when my son was inside, I noticed that it was always very filthy, and it exposed us to this filth. It seemed that there was no thought and little money being given to the cleaning and the sanitary conditions in the jail. Also, during COVID, people in the jail were not immediately given masks and gloves for their safety. To get clean masks and gloves, they had to beg. There was, and is no concern for the safety of the people in jail. Thank you. We do not want a new jail.
Hello, my name is Rudy Cuevas. I'm here with Debug, and I'm definitely opposing this proposal. Let's be realistic here. $2.5 billion, we've been hearing it left and right. We do not need that. We have Santa Clara County Main Jail. We have Elmwood Complex. I just was released from there a month ago. There was availability in bed space like crazy in there. There were cells that are open. I had no cellie for a few months in there because there just wasn't enough people in there to fill up the cells. Same with Elmwood Complex. We need to reconstruct the environment. We need to reconstruct the training of these correctional officers to be able to see that us individuals that are incarcerated at the time get what we need for rehabilitation. I was in there fighting for rehabilitation, fighting to be able to be put in program dorms, writing grievances to be getting put in program dorms. You know what I'm saying? And those grievances are 60 days. They were violating my grievance process and going 94 months. And at the same time, all I get is, oh, well, you have to write out an appeal now. You have to do this. So let's just be realistic. Reconstruct the environment, the rehabilitation aspects that we have within the facilities that we already have. Because if we can't even run these properly, why are we going to build another one and waste all this money? Lack of programs. There's been consistent lack of programs compared to 2017 to 2024 during the Chavez lawsuit. There's been, from 2017 to 2024, I was incarcerated in there. I beat 2 life sentences. 3 of those years, our case was entirely dismissed because of trumped up charges and a false case that the district attorney wanted to go ahead and implement. That's a big problem with the mass incarceration in the facilities in the past. Okay, we're not filled today. We're not filled to capacity. Maybe if we stop trumping up charges, because that's what this is going to lead to. What this is going to lead to is systematic harassment, targeting. It's going to lead to social injustices. You're going to have a whole nother facility that you need to fill up when you have these 2 facilities that aren't even filled up. I was just there. You can't tell me nothing different. I was just there. And so what you're going to do, yeah, sorry. But yeah, no to another jail. I got all the grievances if you guys want to see them.
As the next person approaches the podium, I'll call on our final speakers, Azazel and Allison George. Okay, you may begin.
Hi, everyone. My name is Leslie. I'm a resident of District 5. I've spoken to you so many times about opposing a jail, and here I am saying the same thing again and agreeing with everyone. $2.5 billion is grotesque, but it's not just $2.5 billion. In the item before this, we heard a preview of a request that's forthcoming for a state-of-the-art surveillance system. That is Orwellian. when you consider that that surveillance system is going to give sheriffs moment by moment visibility into incarcerated people's lives, and incarcerated people are only allowed to give feedback or give grievances once per quarter, it's disgusting. That will be another few $1 million. I think even before this, there was another item about improving some other surveillance system at Main Jail. So it's just the millions upon millions upon millions that are being spent on surveilling, incarcerating, and just caging human beings instead of all the things you've heard: healthcare, housing, schools, actual concerted efforts to reduce the jail population. Why are 90% of the people who are incarcerated are awaiting trial? They have not even been found to be guilty of anything. It's really hard to fight a case from behind bars. No jail. Not 2.5 billion, not anymore.
Hi, my name's Allison George. I'm a resident of Santa Clara County, District 5 for over 40 years. I'm a member of Stand Up for Racial Justice, Santa Clara County. I'm also a healthcare provider, a long-term educator at San Jose State University, and someone with a family member directly impacted with serious mental illness and an incarceration history in the county. I vehemently oppose spending $2.5 billion on the jail. My family member who's been incarcerated has rarely got any services that were of benefit. The history and research is well supported that what helps people stay out of jail is not putting them in jail. It's providing services to our community. And like so many of the other speakers have mentioned, I want to live in a place that takes care of our community, our residents. Why we'd be spending $2.5 billion there instead of investing it in education for our kids and healthcare services, particularly mental health care services and substance abuse services, housing, long-term housing options for our disadvantaged populations. We've got to quit throwing money at locking people up and put our money in ways that will actually support and help the members of our community. So I hope that you will seriously consider redirecting funds in a way that will matter to our community. Thank you.
Okay, we'll switch to our Zoom speakers. Our first speaker is Deborah St. Julian. Deborah, please accept the unmute. You have 2 minutes to speak.
My name is Deborah St. Julian, 41-year D2 resident, member of Surge Santa Clara County, and elder at Urban Sanctuary Faith Community. Along with Surge, I am speaking in support of Silicon Valley Debug's strong opposition to approving and accepting the report from the County Executive's Office recommending the $2.5 billion to construct a new jail. The economic outlook and reality on the ground is devastating for government and nonprofit agencies trying to address multiple quality of life and equity issues. 10,000 plus unhoused neighbors, including members of my church, doing all the right things, still struggling to find adequate housing. 55,000 people expected to lose their food benefits in Santa Clara County. UC Berkeley Labor Center estimates about 129,000 residents in Santa Clara County will lose Medi-Cal coverage by 2028. If you include Medicaid coverage, others put these numbers into 300,000 to 400,000. There's deep cuts in domestic violence services focusing on diverting youth from the school to prison pipeline. Prevention is the gold standard of decreasing incarceration. True public safety is adequate housing, food, education, mental and physical health care, youth programs, child care, and an honest assessment of the racial bias in our law enforcement systems. According to the Economic Policy Institute, $2.5 billion could fund over 100,000 public housing units, over 1 million SNAP benefits, over 100,000 people on Medicaid, over 43,000 Head Start slots. We do call on you to fund upstream conditions, and we need to put our funds towards true public safety. No jail. Thank you.
Next speaker is Jenna Kress. Please accept the unmute. You have 2 minutes.
My name is Jenna Kress, and I am a resident of District 4. I oppose approving and accepting this report. Our Black and Brown communities and folks with disabilities have been and continue to be targeted by racist and ableist carceral systems. Cultural and systemic issues, including excessive force, staff misconduct, medical neglect, and other violations of people's rights will not be fixed by transforming our carceral facilities. If we care about the rights and safety of individuals in Santa Clara County, then we can be investing in community-based prevention and early intervention strategies that support well-being. I want the county I live in to listen to the community and to be investing in upstream solutions that lead to decarceration. At a time of significant funding cuts that are quite literally demolishing the infrastructure for community-based services supporting safety and well-being, including the organization I worked for that had to close in 2025 because of these cuts, I do not want my county investing billions of dollars into carceral approaches when we could be investing in our future and true public safety built on people and communities thriving. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next and final speaker is Gina. Please accept the unmute. You have 2 minutes.
Hello, good morning. Dear PSJC, I agree with every comment before me and oppose a new jail. I am a resident of the Alum Rock neighborhood. As a Santa Clara County public health care worker, learning about the county's plan to spend $2.5 billion on a jail is infuriating by undermining the county's safety net. As this committee is well aware, as healthcare workers did not get a wage increase this year. To no surprise, this past year, the price of food has continued to rise, increasing by 4.3% this year, gas for transportation, and increasing rent, among other things. Those rises indeed have a domino effect. We also are part of the same community. As a healthcare worker, knowing we provide life-saving services for this county's patients questions the county's responsibility to sustain us by ensuring that we are able to afford the cost of living in which the county has turned a blind eye by not committing to their workers' safety that provides a viable and equitable living like the county's leadership commitment to building a jail, rather than addressing all the needs of our county and the increasing cost of living. Regardless of where money is coming from, the bottom line is that the will to build a jail should not overshadow healthcare workers' needs of survival, allowing our wages to be affected, which could have had the same effort that it took to prioritize a jail. Thank you.
So all Zoom participants that had their hands raised prior to the closing of the queue have been given an opportunity to provide their comments.
Thank you very much to all of the public speakers. On a perhaps mundane note, but I do like to be precise, the $2.5 billion is for future work, specifically not being considered in this first phase. The project that is proposed to move forward is $1 billion, which is still enormous, but I would like us all to be precise in talking about the same dollars. And frankly, there is nothing I would like less to spend this kind of money on. The issues that you all listed are my policy priorities, and I absolutely agree that it is not carceral facilities that make us safer. It is investments in housing, jobs, food access, childcare, education, and healthcare. I also have an obligation to ensure that people who are required to be held in custody in a county facility And to be clear, the Board of Supervisors has no authority over those decisions. I need to know that they are housed in environments that are safe, that are as least traumatizing as possible, and I don't kid myself to think that being incarcerated can ever be not traumatizing, and environments that are most likely to support any needed rehabilitation, health issues, and ultimately successful reentry. To just make another clear point here, we do not have $1 billion lying around and the luxury of determining how to spend it. In fact, our budget is likely to have another $1 billion deficit for the next several years, thanks to the federal government's slashing of health insurance and other safety net programs, all of the things that you all talked about that indubitably make our community safer and healthier. We would have to incur debt to build this infrastructure. I would like to see us spend as little as possible, but as much as is minimally necessary to create an environment that meets the needs of people who, again, we are required to maintain in our custody. And where they are right now is simply inhumane. Back to staff. Thank you for the report and for completing. Sorry, I'm more upset than I thought I would be. And for completing this first critical phase of the transformation process. Consuelo, you in particular spent years expertly managing the expenditure of nearly $1 billion into permanent supportive housing, and I know that's where your heart is. And like me, I am sure you would rather be investing elsewhere. But county government has many legal mandates. Thank you, Nancy. Many legal mandates, and managing a jail is one of them. If we have to have a jail, let's do right by the people that have to be there. The few questions that I have are technical, really regarding how the report should move forward to the full board. Excuse me. As the report moves to the full board at the August 25th meeting, I'd like the slides to be updated by expanding any acronyms for the different classifications that are being housed. It's going to be important for us to be as clear as possible so the community can track who will be receiving services at what locations. And despite the near universal objection to building anything, I did hear a number of comments lamenting the lack of services and programs that we do provide. With regard to the bed count, without the narrative of your presentation today, Consuelo, it was a challenge to track just from the slides how our facility bed count will evolve over the different phases. So I'd like to see some additional context in both the ledge file and the slides when the report comes back. Finally, I am very interested in the deep study to begin that will inform what the new booking and intake facility will look like. In particular, I hope that we will explore how this facility can be maximized for reentry and diversion purposes. In the past, we've discussed the potential of an on-site pharmacy that would allow people in custody to exit with their medication in hand. Should direct that to you, Rocio. I'm sure that's one of your priorities. I hope that this and other services that support reentry will be considered. And again, to come back to the funding, I know we'll receive some information on funding options when this item comes to the board. Please include information on the implications and timing considerations for each funding option. I had the opportunity to be in Sacramento County last week, beyond the actual city, and had the opportunity to learn a little bit about their process of transforming their jail facilities as well. They've just completed their community engagement process, and Laura Foster is the management analyst who leads the community engagement for their system master planning effort. I realize that you've seen lots of infrastructures, but if it would be helpful to get some lessons learned about the community engagement, my team would certainly be glad to make a connection for you. And I will, without joy, move to receive the report. President Lee.
Yeah, I'll second the received report, but I do have some comments and some questions. And this has been a long time coming. And when I took the vote previously regarding the renovation or the building of the new jail, so-called, one of my main concern or the facts that I was working based on from administration was that Main Jail North would be demolished. I have previously said, and I still believe, that Main Jail North is a crime scene. Too much pain, injuries, and deaths have taken place there for the past 4 decades. Leaving that standing for another 10 to 20 years, what does that mean to those who have suffered those injuries? The administration has been saying that Main Jail North could not be reconstructed or renovated due to earthquake and retrofit issues, in addition to the fact that those concrete walls not being movable. Today is the very first time in my 6 years on this board I'm suddenly hearing that, oh, Main Jail North could be renovated and has 1 or even 2 decades left of use. So this is a piece of fact that I believe both myself and our community need some clarifications, explanation from administration of how that change of opinion suddenly came about. Separately, I mean, I don't think I need the answer necessarily today. I think this probably require a little bit more of an explanation because there's so much going on. But I just want to say there's so much issues. And then the other thing is I do want to mention is some of the other ideas that's put in, I think is certainly commendable, and I want to talk about that as well. And the other thing let's talk about stuff I don't like. The other one is also putting women in Main Jail North. Elmwood is not exactly a great place, but putting women into Main Jail North to me is a step going backwards. That is another issue. As far as what I do like in terms of what I'm seeing here is I really do think those old Elmwood buildings need to be demolished and need to be rebuilt. I think that's absolutely important. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm switching to it. And Elmwood is a much larger site, and I think those who are living there is a much far better place than Main Jail North by any stretch of imagination. So having construction being done in Main Jail in Elmwood is definitely something that I would strongly support. Second thing I will support is we've talked about the need of a mental health facilities that is operated like a hospital, not as a jail. And that is something that I mentioned previously in my former motion, and that I'm seeing that consideration being put into Elmwood. And I think that's exactly where it needs to be. So I certainly appreciate some of those considerations being put in there. This 8th floor on the main jail north has been used as the mental health floor, and we have seen the amount of not just the lack of space, but the danger of having folks being moved from 8th floor down below due to whatever housing issues and being beaten up and hurt and even died down below. So I see that having this mental facilities being completely separated from the other jail facilities is something that's long overdue. Finally, I think the price tag is horrendous. It's scary. I have not seen a lot of these numbers before on this board, and so I need to dig deeper instead of just screaming at it. I need to understand a lot further, and the community needs to understand further how these numbers come about. Sorry, go ahead, Greta.
I can give some brief initial thoughts on some of the questions you posed, and we're happy to come back with further additional analysis. I will also happy to work with you on making sure we can identify some of the probably prior to Consuelo and I being in the roles that we're in today, things that may have come before the board that feel asynchronous with some of the feedback you're hearing today. Couple thoughts, though. One, I think consistent with what's always been the position of administration today and prior administrations is the current intake booking area at Main Jail cannot be successfully remodeled to meet our constitutional and operational needs. So what you're seeing is a proposal to attach a new intake booking area that actually can fulfill those obligations, as well as create appropriate spaces for example, us to be able to do the medical observation necessary when someone comes in who's detoxing because they're using substances in the community and are incredibly medically fragile during that period where they're detoxing when they come into custody, where we can do the sort of mental health assessments that we struggle to do today that allow us to keep people safe when they're in our custody thereafter. And so it is absolutely the case that there are certain portions of our current main jail facility that cannot be adequately remodeled to meet the standards. So what we're trying to do in a context of not wanting to propose spending even more than the $1 billion that's being proposed as initial investment today is to try and utilize existing facilities to the maximum extent we can, often by pivoting the way that we're using them, because they cannot be modified adequately to continue to be safely used in the ways they're being used. So to just take a concrete example, in one of the slides, Consuelo mentioned that the purpose that main jail as a building would serve would change under this proposal. People who are needing to be housed for very long periods of time cannot be humanely and appropriately housed in main jail. As you've observed, it's not a great, safe, appropriate environment for long-term housing. So we would be pivoting to create and replace also totally inadequate, defunct, and unsafe housing at Elmwood with new housing for the folks that we're currently housing at main jail that would allow us to provide them with the services that they need. The other things we'd be doing would be replacing what's currently the 8A with a new facility on the Elmwood campus that would provide mental health services for folks who are going to be in our custody long-term, while also preserving the ability to provide acute mental health housing at main jail for folks who we don't expect to hold in custody for very long, because as you said, right now, the way we're having to utilize these facilities involves a lot of transport of folks back and forth between Elmwood and main jail, either from Elmwood to main jail to get medical and mental health services that they may need that are really acute. And that transport is costly, it's extremely dangerous, it's very high risk. Transporting someone in psychiatric crisis is really, really dangerous, as the board is well aware. And so a lot of these proposals are trying to make the strategic investments needed to upgrade or replace the facilities that are completely failing with facilities that meet our need, while also significantly reducing the overall number of beds that we have in our jails. And you're right, the numbers are staggering. Frankly, I think, just costs for constructing these types of facilities are staggering everywhere they're happening. And obviously construction costs, as we've seen, inflation and other impacts on the economy are really going through the roof. We're also trying to be really realistic with the board about what it will take. Supervisor Ellenberg, to your comment, we're happy to clarify, and we'd actually already intended to do so in what we bring forward to the full board. What's being proposed is just those initial phases of investment that deal with the most significant issues. I think, Supervisor Lee, to your point, we would, in an ideal world, also replace main jail. It does need to be replaced. We think that this is the best proposal we can come up with to continue utilizing that facility, because we don't want to build a new main jail, because the cost would be even more staggering if we did. And so what you're seeing is us try to piece together what we think is the way to get the most and spend the least, in part by also asking the sheriff's office to make really significant operational pivots, some of them to align with best practices, some of them to align with being able to better utilize existing facilities by totally changing the way that we're using them in ways that make them safer to use for those purposes, reduce transport, et cetera. But there's a lot to unpack in these recommendations, a lot that's still in the works. This is really trying to bring forward to the board an initial proposal for some of the most critically needed investments at a high level. We will then proceed with design, but we were actually a bit surprised, Supervisor, to get a much deeper facility condition assessment than had ever previously been done of Main Jail, and to hear that it was actually in better shape than we thought. And that was one of the things that we had brought forward before in one of the prior facility presentations, to say that actually the experts that we hired felt like we did not need to replace Main Jail for the next at least couple decades. We absolutely will thereafter if we pivot its use, build this new intake facility adjacent to it, and make certain major investments in kind of its core systems. So that was their expert assessment that they provided to us.
Yeah, so if you could provide those changes, because that's a significant change of opinion on this building, in addition to the fact that it was supposed to be not earthquake safe. Those were the words I was given by our former county executive, that this building needs to go, and based on those understanding is how I made my decision previously. So these are some of, I mean, it's really important, because we can have different opinions, but we can have different set of facts. And I think it's important that we get our facts straight so that we could then hopefully make the right decision. So I just want to make sure we have that clear, because I certainly don't want to, and also with any type of renovation that was told, given the fact that those walls are all concrete, you cannot move them around. With this proposal in front of us saying that, oh, you can still do that, that's, again, another piece of news to me. So, again, and I'm not asking you for give me an answer to that. I certainly want a much deeper dive to really understand the situation. I have no interest of building anything new. We don't have to waste money on building a jail, as has been mentioned so many times. That's not my goal. My goal is I need to have a space, not I need, I think our community needs a space, so that those who are in our incarcerated system is going to be safe, it's going to be humane, and that's the bottom line. And that there is actually, like many have said, it needs to be clean, it needs to have rehabilitation programs, so that this is not just a matter of lock them up and throw the keys away. That's the last thing we need. And I think the problem with the Main Jail North, the way it's been built, it reminds me more of Shawshank Redemption than the type of facility that is meeting today's challenges that we talk about with our programming spaces, the triangle areas, as they call open space. I've been there many times, and they give me the EBGBs. So again, I don't need to continue on my diatribe here. I think this facility has been going on for 40 years. I don't really think we need to have this continued, but in case, again, I'm not the expert. There are experts that came back that says this facility could stay longer. I certainly would like to hear more how this could be done. But at the same time, I think from the community, as you can hear, if we're going to build something else, we need to make the case. The difference of what actually is being put in will be far better for those who, unfortunately, will be incarcerated, so that when they're in there, they truly will get the type of services and rehabilitation that will be needed than what has happened in the past decades.
And if I may, through the chair, thank you, Supervisor Lee, for those comments. As Greta mentioned, we were not aware of prior feedback that was, or information that was shared with you. I also wanted to clarify, the proposal does not include housing women at Main Jail North. So
Okay, I'm sorry. I saw some pictures that says Main Jail North of some women.
No, we'll go back and look at the slides and confirm that there is nothing that alludes to that. I also wanted to share that renovations at Main Jail North happen every year.
Right.
What we mean by renovations is not moving concrete walls. It's similar to, no. So we will make sure to clarify that both in the legislative file and in the presentation, that when we mean renovations, this really is, you have this space, how can you repurpose it? Given that we are proposing to construct new facilities at the replacement facilities at Elmwood. So I just want to reassure you that there is no proposal to change a concrete wall. Renovation is, very minor modifications that are not defined yet.
Okay, thank you. I see lots of lights, so I don't want to hog up all the time. Sorry.
All right. Lots of lights? Is it, oh, that's good. We'll start with Damon and then work our way down. Thank you. Public Defender.
Thank you. I would just add to the conversation, and this may be premature, but I would hope that however we move forward, we incentivize de-incarceration and community healing. And what I mean by that is I'm hearing communities share a concern I have, which is this idea, you know, if you build it, you will fill it. I think there's actually positive indication in this county that we have not done that in the past. We have, I think, around 4,100 beds available now. There's a projection. Is it Consuelo?
All right, we have a rated capacity of a little over 4,800.
Okay.
And of those, 38 are deemed, you know, decent enough to be used. Sometimes we have to close beds in order to make some physical improvements, and other times, as Greta mentioned, the building is crumbling around us, and so the sheriff's office and the custody health team have the very difficult job of moving people from one housing unit to another. So a little over 4,800, but the actual usable beds is about 3,800.
And not that long ago, we had maybe an average standing population of about 4,000. During COVID, we were down to almost 3,000. In recent months, we've been close to 2,300. And so the observation I would just share is that, and the challenge and sometimes the frustration I've experienced is when we actually have programming that results in de-incarceration, is there the actual financial incentive? In essence, can you close portions of the facility or not even ultimately build portions of the facility if we properly incentivize de-incarceration? And so I just hope that will be kept front of mind moving forward so that we have an incentive, in essence, to invest in those de-incarceration programs rather than necessarily saying, well, they don't actually provide a return on investment because we can't shutter portions of the facility or because we've potentially overbuilt any facility if we move forward with building a facility. And so I just want to keep that observation front of mind.
Thank you very much. Assistant Sheriff.
Thank you, Supervisor Ellenberg. First and foremost, thank you so much for the community members that have taken the time to come share their thoughts on this item. It's very important for us to hear that feedback. Thank you to staff for this report. I'll certainly echo the comments of my fellow committee members here that have been shared with everybody. The one element that I want to make sure that we're also mindful of as we continue to move forward is, while certainly the intent here is to ensure that our incarcerated population receive the care and resources that they need and deserve while they are incarcerated, and to ensure that they are in a safe and secure environment, I also want to make sure that we're mindful of the impact that our jail facilities have on overall public safety throughout the county. And I'm glad to see that the intake area of our main jail is part of this plan, because with the new requirements of medical clearance for our incarcerated population coming into the facilities, while that's continuing to be refined and our staff are continuing to help facilitate that efficiency, when our officers throughout the county are stuck in intake for a long extended period of time, those are officers that are not in the community providing public safety. So the question that I do have for you, in addition to the intake center being relocated at Main Jail, has there been any discussion to also create an opportunity at Elmwood for a secondary intake center or capability for redundancy? And I'm thinking of this in two ways. If there was some sort of a catastrophic event that enabled our main jail intake, having a secondary space available to accommodate that is one path that I'm thinking. But then secondarily, if we have an influx of a major event in the county, FIFA, Super Bowl, or whatever the case may be, where we might have an increase in number of bookings, for our staff to be able to open up a secondary site to help reduce that lack of presence for our partner agencies out in the community.
I can provide, first maybe I'll just share a quick thought in response to the comment from our public defender, and then I'm happy to address the undersheriff's comment and also give an opportunity perhaps for Consuelo or Assistant Sheriff Duran to weigh in on some of the considerations that have animated the intake related proposals. First, I think, Damon, to your comments, I think absolutely this plan is designed to account for, as part of the phasing, constant revisiting of our jail population projections for exactly the reason you say. It also has replacement facilities enter in phases for exactly that reason as well. So we know that right now, and I'll just say the red buildings, I wish I had the slide in front of me that had all the red buildings on the Elmwood campus that are getting ready to be demolished. It begins with the demolition of what we refer to as minimum camp, because we don't hold anyone who's a minimum security person in custody by and large anymore because of exactly the evolutions in policy that we've been talking about. Those facilities are really deteriorated. We need to tear them down. We won't be building new minimum housing units because we shouldn't be housing folks in custody if they're minimum security people. And so that wholesale demolition of minimum camp reflects what we already know today. But the phased investment in additional housing out on the Elmwood campus will allow for us, if we continue to see, which we all hope we will, a decline in our jail population, to then not make those subsequent investments and to tear down more and more of the aging facilities on the Elmwood campus, as we need ideally fewer and fewer beds. And I do just want to emphasize that even today, we're proposing a 1,400 bed reduction to really bring down and never refill beds that were built in this community decades ago when we did hold people in custody. The other idea behind switching, and this is kind of a good segue to the question from the undersheriff, which is part of that idea behind pivoting the way we're using main jail, is that we would only ever take to Elmwood folks that we expect to hold in custody for longer periods of time. That environment, which allows for much more access to the outdoors, much more programming, much more healthcare to be delivered on that large campus, would afford those folks much greater opportunities than, for example, we currently offer in main jail today, for all of those services to be provided for people who actually do really need them, because they will be in our custody for months or years, not just days. Conversely, when we want to try and divert at intake booking as many folks. So one of the things that we explored, a little bit different than what you proposed or asked us about a potential for intake booking at Elmwood, and we will continue to look into, is what we've seen in some communities, which is adjacent to but separate from the jail, an opportunity where folks who may just need to be go through initial processing, but we know are then going to be cited and released by the sheriff's office, never go into the full intake booking area. They can be actually triaged into sort of a separate line where they never come into custody. The sheriff's office is able to do whatever processing it needs to do, and then they are right back out into the community because they're not going to be held. And to try and decompress what would be the intake booking area for those folks who are going to ultimately likely end up in custody. So part of how we will both reduce the demands and costs associated with that new intake booking facility will be with an eye towards those sorts of opportunities, and it also allows for us to more quickly funnel to non-custody status anyone who we think is never going to come into our custody.
Great, thank you. That makes complete sense. And just in closing, I just want to just underscore the Sheriff's Office will continue to be prepared to pivot, adjust our resources and staffing allocations to continue to find efficiencies on current operations within our current facilities, and certainly as we go down this path to help accommodate this transition.
Thank you. Independent alternate public defender, Sylvia Perez McDonald.
Thank you. Just a few points. First, in my almost 30 years of practice in this county, from the defense perspective, I can say without hesitation that I've never seen a leadership in our county that is more committed to the welfare and well-being of our community, and that the political motivation here is really the long-term investment in the community. The responsible thing to do is what I think the board is leaning to do, which is to invest in the infrastructure that is legally mandated, and it's not a choice. And I know that from my perspective. I also know that from a practical, pragmatic perspective, on a daily basis, we struggle constantly in the service of the people that are in that facility, because despite the fact that we are doing our damnness to offer as many services as possible, sometimes it's impossible to fit all the services we want because the infrastructure is so lacking. And it would be irresponsible for us to fail to address that. For instance, we now have social workers that can come into the facility and serve our clients. We have attorneys that sometimes need to see the clients. We have medical staff that are mental health or address medical needs. And when we have to turn away a lawyer or a social worker or an investigator because we don't have capacity to meet their needs, that has a practical impact. That case will be delayed. A lawyer will not see their client. And those are realities that we simply cannot ignore. I also think that the physical improvement of the building does not change culture and does not change mindsets. And that is still going to be an absolute necessity for us to focus on. And I know that we're on the right path to do that. In this report, in this session, we know that there's going to be this survey. And I know that based on the commitment from the sheriff, the commitment from our board, there's going to be a dedication to help shift the culture so that we can focus on rehabilitation and effective services. And I think that's what gives me hope, looking at this from a defense perspective and understanding that we don't want people in custody, but when they are there, we have to serve them to the best of our ability, and we simply cannot do that in the status quo.
Thank you very much. Did you have anything else to add? Your light's on.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, just very quickly, I just want to say, agreed with many of the comments given today, and I think it's so important to make sure that we are going to do this thoughtfully, and that's why we want the community inputs. One word is I do want to thank those who came in today to give your comments, and I think it's important to also acknowledge that whatever we are building or renovating moving forward, we need your input to put in what would be the important things so that whatever we are building in the future is something that will improve the life of those who are in custody or who will be in custody. I want you to make sure you spend the time to do that. I think that's a very important part of why this public input is coming in, and we hope that you will take the time to think hard. What are the challenges that, for those of you who've been in there or knows people in there, how we could do a better job to make sure that these injustice or these pain does not continue in the future. Second is regarding the cost. The cost is clearly far exceeding anybody's expectation. And I want to make sure that we look harder as like things like warehouse. I mean, is this really something that has to be there? Can it be somewhere else? Because we can't imagine warehouses will be that expensive. Well, again, I don't know the answer and don't have to give it to me today, but go back and look into things that it doesn't need to be on site. Number one. Second thing is, you talked about buying a building potentially, and it's probably too costly. That's a separate discussion, but I certainly think we should have a little discussion on that, because knowing, like say for example, office building right now is probably one of the lowest cost, or lowest price right now for so many empty buildings out there. So if those could be repurposed for some of these purposes, I think it would be certainly all cheaper than trying to build something new too. So I'm just going to throw it out as things that you can consider before coming back to the board. Thanks.
Thank you. And I will wrap up really with a community message. I still hope that you will participate in the opportunities for engagement. Participation, in my view, doesn't negate your fundamental opposition to investing in carceral facilities. I think with that as a baseline, to the extent that you are willing to still engage and say, all right, if you're going to do this thing that we do not want you to do, these are things from our experience or our loved ones' experience that would be helpful. So to the extent any of the fundamental opponents are still willing to work with us, we truly, truly would appreciate that and would in no way view that as a sudden 180-degree shift in priorities. And frankly, that's how I'm coming at this as well, as a necessity that I would like to get right. We have a motion and a second. Do you have something else to add before we go?
No, I was only going to add one thing to your comment, Susan, which is, Supervisor, which is to also offer for those folks who may want to just better understand our legal obligations in this space. It gives us no joy to bring forward these recommendations either. We're also happy to make sure folks understand the lack of choice we have in some of these investments. So it also, alongside a desire for engagement, even from folks who would not, like we, like to see some of these investments be made, to just better understand why we don't have discretion in many components of what's being brought forward.
It would be nice if things that we were mandated to do actually came with funding, as an aside.
So I like this from me from a lawyer, and I would like try to explain. What Greta is trying to say is that we have this lawsuits, and with the judge and the court decree that basically order us that right now what we have is not acceptable, and we need to make changes. And so therefore, it's not like we want to make those changes necessarily, but we have been told that if you don't make those changes, we have bad things happen to this county. Thank you.
There's a wide amount of room there to talk about this. Let's please vote on this item.
Vice Chairperson Lee
Aye.
and Chairperson Ellenberg?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries with 2.
Thank you very much. Item 6 is any announcements? Looking for lights on. Seeing none.
Actually, Supervisor.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I didn't see the light.
That's okay. Just real
Thank
quick,
you.
just in closing, I just think we would be remiss to acknowledge the tremendous success in our county following our World Cup FIFA events and Super Bowl. And I just want to say that it's through the collaboration of all county departments and public safety, justice departments throughout our entire county that we're able to come together and collaborate to ensure that this community, the visitors of this community, remain safe and secure to have a fun event throughout World Cup and Super Bowl. And I just really want to extend my appreciation on behalf of the sheriff to all of our partners for that collaboration and success. And it's something that the community should celebrate and not take for granted, and just reinforces the fact that we have good systems in place, good relationships and partnerships in place to accomplish that. And I just wanted to extend that appreciation.
And I cannot agree more, Chair, on that comment, having both Super Bowl and 6 FIFA games at the county. My only complaint is actually for those TV display, keep saying San Francisco, because San Francisco is not part of Santa Clara County, and people get confused where the games were played, but they are here in Santa Clara County. Thank you. For the record.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for setting the record straight. We are now adjourned. The next regular meeting is scheduled for Thursday, September 10th, 2026 at 10 a.m.